Hello, I'm Grant from Maker's Vlog, and today in Portland, I think in Oregon in America, they came up with a cool system. It's where they take power from their pipes. Now, what they do is they have a pipe that's pumping water to various houses and whatnot. It's just their mains water supply. And what they're doing is they're putting turbines in the way of that water flow to turn them and generate electricity. Now, my first thought was, that's a pretty cool idea. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. And did a quick bit of digging into it. And of course, the reason that you're now listening to me talk about this is because, of course, you had the plethora of people going, free energy, that's it, this will teach the oil barons and coal people, fucking I don't know what you want to call them. Yeah, because this is free energy. It's fucking not. For the love of God, it is not free energy. Please. There is no free, say it with me, there is no free energy. There's passive energy, which is what I've taken to call a lot of these. I don't know, I still don't know whether that's the actual term, but I'm going to always keep calling it passive energy. Because it's taking power from something that's already happening. So that water has momentum, pressure going through that pipe, and you're using it to power something. It's not free. Now, originally I had the thought that, it's a good idea, it's not free, but the more I thought about it, I actually think, is it really that useful? And I'll get onto that in a second. But just as a point, so here is, it's black, that is your pipe, okay? And you have a pumping house here, Pete, and you have a house here, right? So the pumping house pressurizes the water and pumps it to the houses. So you have water flowing through, okay? Now, let's say, now we'll keep the math simple, so we'll say that that pump house uses, produces 10 psi of water pressure, and that's what pumps through it. What they've done is they've essentially interrupted the pipe and put in a turbine, we'll put it there, and it'll have wee blades on it, and it's in there, and that's being turned by the pressure. Now, this is not free. There's an exchange of energy going on inside this pipe. At this point here, this is 10 psi. In order to turn that turbine, we'll say that it costs 1 psi. That means that the water from here is actually at 9 psi. With me so far? It takes energy to create energy. So you're taking that water pressure and using it to turn the turbine, and then that generates electricity. And we'll say that for every 1 psi that turns, let's say it makes 10 watts of power. So minus 1 psi equals 10 watts. Okay? Now, originally I thought, not a bad idea, this is pretty cool. My main concern was the need to worry about how many turbines they put in, because it'll obviously decrease the water pressure on the other end and could then lead to the houses not getting the correct, or not getting enough water pressure to run the taps and run the pipes and everything else. But I figured, what, they'll have thought that out, they'll have enough there that it'll be using whatever surplus. And I thought about it because exchange of energies is never efficient. So that generates 10 watts by turning the turbine and taking 1 psi of pressure from the water. But how much does it take to actually generate that pressure? And I could tell you that this is obviously not the correct numbers, but we've scaled it down, that for this pump house to create 1 psi of pressure, it needs about 30 watts. So for 1 psi of pressure, which is, so this is 10, so this pump house is costing 300 watts to generate that 10 psi of pressure. For 1 psi it takes 30 watts, and in this you are getting 10 watts of that back. So you're still losing 20 watts of power that's just going to be lost to heat and friction. Now you might be thinking, oh well, you're still getting that back. And you are, but is that the most efficient way to do it? Surely, if I've worked out, okay, for all the houses on this system, I need to have that at 5 psi. That's the limit. That's what I need to comfortably supply all of these houses. So instead of putting in a load of turbines that will then generate, so you could put in 5 of them and get 50 watts back. It's not that efficient. So why don't you just go to the pump house and go, do you know what? We actually only need 5 watts of power, or 5 psi of pressure. So why don't we just change the pumps so that they output 5 psi. And then instead of getting 30 watts back, 50 watts back from having multiple turbines, by dropping that in half, you're then saving 150 watts. So I'll quickly just tidy this up. So by reducing the power or the psi at the pipe, and we'll get rid of our wee turbine because we wouldn't need the turbine. So at 10 psi, that needs 300 watts. But we know that we only need 5 psi to actually supply the houses. So if we just go, okay, we actually only need 5 psi in the pipes so that the pump only outputs 5 psi. Instead of needing 300 watts to power that with the 10 psi that we were previously using, you now only need 150 watts. So you're saving 150 watts, and that's just looking at the base values. Then you also take into account how much did it cost to put in this system of turbines to take this power, whereas you could just turn the pressure down on the pumps. Now, this is not a true equivalency. There are different factors in this, but the principle remains the same, that you don't need to put something in the way to try and recover some of that power, when you can just reduce the power at the source, and then you're just making the saving anyway. Now there are some scenarios where that doesn't work. A good example is heating from a server room. So if you have a server room that's generating a hell of a lot of heat, you can't really turn down the heat in that room because it's passive from the servers and everything else, and without reducing the number of servers that you have, which is difficult, expensive, and in some cases just not practical. Using the heat to heat the building instead of using boilers and whatnot. In that case, that makes sense to put in some fans to take that heat and distribute it through the building. In that case, reducing it at the source doesn't work. But for that example, definitely with the water, yeah, you could totally reduce that at the source, and you're laughing. So that's it. That was my thoughts on the Portland free energy devices that I've been putting in. If you've liked, please like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff, and I'll see you later.